I gotta talk about the White Lotus because this show is currently the bane of my existence. I've watched every episode that's available. We're like halfway through season 3, and it's a roller coaster, and I gotta talk about it. Mainly, I want to talk about the way the show tricks you into thinking that it is actually a very good show, when more often than not, it's the worst fucking thing on TV. The first thing we got to talk about is the structure of the show. It's the most identifiable thing. Every season has a different group of people, and they're all the same type of entitled, rich, eclectic assholes. They're just different flavors of unlikable rich people, because the White Lotus is a resort for wealthy people, and each season takes place at a different location with some crossover of characters, but mainly a new batch every season. And it's just a telling of like random situations. Now, every season starts off with a murder. It's like, hey, there's a dead body in the ocean, or hey, they're loading a dead body onto the plane. So people mistakenly think it's a murder mystery. But murder mysteries have a murder, and then everybody's spending the rest of the time trying to figure out who did the murder. This works in opposite. You start with the premise that at the end of the vacation, somebody dies, you go back to the beginning of the vacation, and in that way, it forces you to look at every dramatic interaction as a potential cause of this murder. Now, the funny thing is, without this mechanic, so much of the interactions between these characters would fall absolutely flat. You would be like, why the fuck am I watching this? In season 1, it's like, how much can I watch Alexandra Daddario like just look shocked at the fact that the guy she just married is actually an insufferable rich prick? But because there's a chance that it turns out one of them kills the other, it borrows a bit of juice from that and keeps you watching. There's so many dramatic interactions that are just nothing burgers that are only carried by the simple fact that it might ultimately lead to somebody getting murdered, and that might be the interesting thing. But it's kind of genius, really, because it's the promise of something juicy that forces you to commit to going through all of the other uninteresting stuff. It's like hiding the peas in the mashed potatoes. Or it's like the promise of a free ziplining tour that gets you to actually commit to the boring timeshare presentation. Now, the other way it tricks you is through the aesthetic, and it's a very stylistic show to its credit, and I enjoy it pretty heavily up to a point. The intro is very interesting and artistic. That, along with the music, is related to wherever they're located. So far, we've had Hawaii, Sicily, and now we're in Thailand. And the music is very distinct, very unique, very artistic. However, the music has that role where it's supposed to give like that interesting sheen to whatever is going on. The same way when the music hits a crescendo in a slasher movie, like right where you think the killer is going to turn the corner, like that's where the violin music hits the peak.
You are so talented.
It is constantly berating you over the head with that music to make you think that this is suspenseful, and nothing suspenseful is going on. And it doesn't take very many episodes into the season for you to get a feel for that, and then the music just becomes kind of grating. But at first glance, anybody's going to watch this and say, oh my god, this is some art house film festival stuff. These guys, they must really know what they're doing. And really, it's just kind of a cheap wrapper that covers the shit sandwich underneath. And then the biggest way to fool people into thinking that what you're doing is actually of high quality is to add social commentary to it. Everybody loves social commentary. I say that topical stuff is the retarded cousin of member berries. If I was more clever, I would have a similarly memeable name to give it. But the way people are like, oh, I remember that. I remember from back when. With topical stuff, people are very easily pulled into like, oh, I recognize that thing from the news. Or I recognize it from my friend's political discussions. Now, because the theme deals with rich people, and it's supposed to juxtapose kind of the ugliness of these groups of people with the beautiful imagery of all the things that their wealth affords them, including these sceneries and this first-class service. The social commentary is focused on the wealthy. The first season, it goes heavy on race, and of course it's the writers' cartoonish ideas of what these obnoxious people are going to say with regards to race. Now, with these rich characters, entitlement is high, rudeness is high. The rudeness is often presented with this fake, polite, or civilized veneer, like watching the Cougars in the current season, season 3, just ooze over each other in person the way women kind of can do in a way that's really obnoxious. Oh my God, I love that you're X, Y, and Z. And the second they're out of the room, it's shit talking. It's, oh, I feel so bad for her. Or, my God, I can't believe she's whatever. And the rudeness bleeds over to each other. Of course, it bleeds over to how they treat the help. You get the mounds of family dysfunction. That's another one. And it seems to be escalating over the seasons to where I don't know that we're going to be able to finish season 3 the way this shit's going with the brothers. The whole thing reminds me of that joke about the aristocrats. If you've ever seen the documentary or even heard about it, it's about this joke that just is a family where they end up just doing more obscene and profane and disgusting things with and to each other. And then the punchline is like, it's like, what do you call them? You call them the aristocrats.
This family, mother, father, and 4 kids. Doesn't matter if they're boys or girls. And they're going to be used anyway as just nothing more than a whole, is what this joke's about anyway. It's about using your kid, you know, they have a paper route to go to school, and then you fuck them. No, that's...
Much of the commentary here is that. Now, one of the things I will say, it does hit you over the head at some points as being like an obviously written by woke lefty type of show, but I give a ton of charity to anything that cuts both ways, and I think this show does, and I'm pretty sure it's intentional. Like in season 1, you have the Mossbachers going on about like this cringy rant about race, and it's like the worst, most tone-deaf takes anybody could imagine, right in front of their daughter's friend, who is obviously of liberal sensibilities and also not white. So it makes you cringe just for the lack of tact that they're offering. And I've even seen reviewers talk about the commentary on whiteness making it so watchable. Yeah, and I'm sure it is. Just like if you're a fundamentalist Christian, you find Kirk Cameron movies super watchable. But to have commentary that appeals to a wide group of people, there kind of has to be open season, and these personality types exist all over the place. But then you have Paula, the daughter's friend, who herself was benefiting from going with his family on this extravagant vacation, doesn't seem especially grateful, seems to be perfectly fine, kind of making jokes towards the mother, going off, doing her own thing, hooking up with one of the native boys, and even herself as a tourist feels perfectly fine just kind of using him, and when he falls for her, she says, let's get real, I'm probably never going to see you again. So she is similarly in that position, and she even gasses him up to commit a robbery because of what he is owed by this family because they're white and he's not. Similarly, season 2 features the high dysfunction of the males in the Italian family, the manipulation of the young Italian prostitutes, the vindictive criticism of Harper and Ethan. They think of themselves as the friends who are only along for the ride because they're white passing, and they seem comfortable thinking of themselves as something else, but they're just the same. They're a different side of the same coin. So the commentary can be over the top and obnoxious, and it can sacrifice other more interesting things for its own self-service, but I will at least give the show that it does seem to cut both ways. Now, with all of those things present, you have the makings of something that should look like a good show. The reason it's bad, number one, the disjointed storylines are just insufferable because they generally have nothing to do with each other. And I'm sorry to use the term storyline because it suggests story, and there usually isn't one here. Like, look, if you guys have ever wanted to watch a series that has 6 separate storylines that don't have anything to do with each other being cut to back and forth in 45-second intervals, this is the show for you. Now, stories don't have to be specifically connected in this type of setting, and I would say they don't even really need a specific plot, but you do need something to carry it. So either the dialogue, the settings, the characters have to be very interesting, or there has to be some thematic thread that goes through it, and that doesn't really exist. And it's made much worse in the show by thing number 2, which is too many uninteresting characters and settings and really nothing happening. I can think of the last episode of season 3 we just watched. What do you have? You got the 3 cougars that are out partying with Russians because they want to feel young again. You got baby Billy.
Ta-da! Look who it is.
This motherfucker.
Meeting Sam Rockwell in a bar to listen about his addiction-infused gender crisis. Came out of left field, has nothing to do with anything else, doesn't have anything to do with this character's trajectory, and where he's supposed to be on the path to finding the guy that killed his dad, he even gets sidelined here, and we have to deal with this very Tarantino type aside that leaves us wondering like what we're supposed to be getting out of this. You got the rich businessman who's moping about his business being investigated by the feds. You got the rich businessman's weird sons being fucking weird with each other while trying to bang these 2 girls on a boat, but also bang each other. And each scene gets about 3 sentences on average before it cuts to the next one. And it reminds me of what they do in action trailers, where you have short snippets that are designed to feel more action-packed, give sense of urgency, give a sense of pop to each scene. Because if you had to watch each scene in its entirety, you'd be bored out of your fucking mind. And in addition to that, you're getting the music, which continuously ramps up telling you something's happening when nothing fucking happens.
You are so talented.
Or they're looking for someone.
Oh, hey, slow down. dick.
Why are rich men always so angry?
This might make sense if there was some continuity between these things going on, but there's absolutely none, and each storyline on its own is leading to a big goddamn nothing. And again, the only reason we're left watching is because we want to see who dies, because we hate all of these people and we're hoping it's most of them. Even the good ones, the ones you'd root for, you want them offed for the crime of being fucking boring. Now, some of this show does get carried through a bit by charismatic cast members, and that's always some mix of their story actually being somewhat interesting or the dialogue being especially good for them, and of course, just the general charisma of the person playing them. In season 1, Daddario, very likable initially. We kind of recognize her as the good guy, the nice one, amidst these people who decidedly weren't. Steve Zahn was another likable guy you kind of feel for amidst his crisis with his wife and learning news about his dad being gay. You have Armand, the manager, who was quirky and sinister, and you were kind of interested to see what he was up to or how far he would go to kind of be a douchebag. And then Jennifer Coolidge being very Jennifer Coolidge. There were some interesting points there. However, all of this momentum that it built up wears off because there's only so many times you can see Alex Daddario looking surprised at what a prick her husband's being without actually doing anything about it. There's only so many times you can see Steve Zahn getting drunk and moping in the pool with his son. But the point is, nothing happened. And I got very friendly with the fast forward button by the last 3 episodes. Jesus Christ, by season 3, we have the masseuse just walking around asking people about Gary. That was supposed to be a big reveal. Oh my God, that's Gary from season 1. I remember him. And then it's just nothing. Her walking around scared, asking people questions, no tension. So the people that are actually really caught up in season 3 currently and having a great time, I would strongly argue are people that are just easily brought in by things that are edgy or titillating, because that's what the show seems to be hinging on. It reminds me of Shameless, where the entire premise is just what weird shit can we get people to get interested in? I mean, at this point, people are just watching to see if the 2 brothers fuck each other. But their weirdo dysfunction doesn't seem to have been tied to anything else about their family. We don't know enough about them for this to be part of some character development we're going to care about. There's just these 2 guys acting like kind of generic rich brothers, and it just so happens that there's weird sexual tension between them. No real substance, just edgy titillation. And in the vein of the characters being uninteresting and nothing happening because there aren't really plots, that also means that there really aren't stakes. Really good murder mysteries are known for the murder being able to be solved. When you look back, there's enough clues. But the other cardinal sin that this makes is by having somebody die and have it be completely fucking random. Like, of course, the tension that builds up over the season has something to do with the murder, but which one dies and the way they die, it's completely fucking random. Now, I do have to address season 2 because that's the anomaly. Most of what I talked about was season 1 and so far what we have in season 3. But season 2 is probably one of the best seasons of anything I've ever watched, which is mind-boggling because it follows the same template, it has the same beats, yet it managed to find something there that was very unique and special. For the disjointed storylines, season 2 had very connected storylines. The characters interact with each other more, and it's over very similar themes. You have Cameron and Daphne, who are the rich, toxic, overly happy, cheating couple where there's a lot of darkness underneath it. And then you have their rich alternative, we're not like them friends in the form of Harper and Ethan. And their entire tension is based around sex, fidelity, lying, expectations, the you that you present to other people. Similarly, you have the DeGrasso men, grandfather, father, and son, who are there to kind of rediscover their history in Sicily. They're all chauvinists, so it's all about their relationship with women, the dysfunction, again, lying, fidelity, expectations, the son's expectation for what relationships are going to be like. He plays a nice guy role, but ends up inadvertently falling back into the identity that was set for him by his father and grandfather. You have Lucia and Mia, the young sex workers. They're sneaking in to take advantage of the opportunity of wealthy people there. And their entire development is based around what their expectations are for life, how they use sex to get what they want, and the honesty or dishonesty of how they present themselves to other people. Even Tanya's assistant, I forget her name, but she wants the adventure that she thinks she deserves, and it ends up turning into kind of a twisted nightmare, which again, it's her expectations, being around people that are lying to her and her own naivete. All of the stories are immensely intertwined, both by the characters and by the themes of power and sex. Most of the characters present as something that they are not, and it's only through the trials they go through that they end up working out that and come out the other side changed. That is what you call a story. The characters are all exponentially more engaging anyways. With worse material to draw off of, they would still be interesting to watch. The acting was better, the dialogue was better, the tension that was created as these relationships unfold kept you more engaged. You're trying to figure out if the person presenting as a nice guy actually has good intentions, or is he a fucking psychopath? And there's a few people that fit that bill. Tension when Albie was waiting for Tanya's assistant that he has a crush on, and they're supposed to go on a date, and he's waiting patiently while she's up talking to some dude, and he feels it slipping away because she's really not interested anymore. I felt that in my soul. Similarly, when Ethan is watching his wife Harper toy with him by intentionally going up and flirting with his supposed friend who he is very insecure of, who's causing a lot of tension along the way. Tension on tension on tension that you feel in a very visceral way, which again is what you need if you're going to have a storyline that is not heavy on plot beats. And I would also say the uncertainty, the doubt that you have with the characters and their development was artfully handled. You take the prostitutes, for instance, they're both charming and likable, and you're waiting for them to have that pretty woman moment where they are saved, or they find that they actually want love or want something stable. And you never know at any point when they're talking to one of their Johns or their Marks, are they coming out of it, or is this part of the act? There's doubt at every single step, and that's what the show wants you to have. Now, I'm inclined to call season 2 a fluke, because having a show structured like this, it only flies. It only gets you that season 2 juice if you are masterful at routinely having tense interactions with people that you actually care about and unfolding those stories in a way that brings about something like a satisfying conclusion. That is what good storytelling is. So if they're not doing work to keep the events of each group or person thematically related, if there's no stakes, if the characters are boring and insufferable, and if there's a lot of dead time having you focused on absolutely fucking nothing, you're not going to get that same magic. And as far as I'm concerned, more of this show has been that than not. So I'm going to tough out season 3. I would be very surprised if I come back for season 4. Let me know what you guys think. Do you absolutely love this show? What moments stood out to you? What are the complaints you've had, the points of frustration? Let me know in the comments. Till next time, this is Bromley. I'll see you.